Hello, my name is Cynthia Kaufman. I want to welcome everybody to our emergency preparedness meeting. I am wearing, I have blonde hair, I'm Caucasian, and I'm wearing a striped pink and red shirt. My pronouns is she, her, hers. Captions are available on Zoom. Click show subtitle in your Zoom menu bar to turn them on. Captions are also running at captionviewer.net, and we will paste the information into the chat. ASL interpreters are available today. We are provisioning in gallery view, so the interpreters should always be visible, but you can pin them if you would like. You do not need to be on the Zoom app to access this event. You are able to dial in by phone. We will read all questions out loud and voice any images on the screen so that the content will be available to individuals calling in on the phone or who cannot see the visual content. This event is being recorded. We will answer questions periodically throughout the discussion via the chat. We will use both person with disability and disabled person interchangeably, recognizing different people's preferences for person first or identity first language.
Thank you, Cynthia. And hi, everyone. Welcome to our webinar series on Get Ready Together Emergency Preparedness. This is the third event. My name is Tia Baloo, and I go by pronouns of she, her, hers. I am an AmeriCorps member serving at the Disability Empowerment Center, and my focus is emergency management coordination. Today is our topic on utilities and preparing for power outages. So as a quick check-in before we get started, I'd love to ask you guys if you've ever had to shut down any of your utilities in your home and why that might have been the case, as well as if you have any plans. Maybe you already have a pretty extensive plan in place for power outages. And you can also type this into the chat or unmute. Sometimes it's quicker and easier to do one or the other for people. Okay, so it looks like Cindy, you said you have not had to shut down utilities, but you do have a backup power bank with solar panels as backup power. That's wonderful. Yeah. Thinking ahead of not just how you'll immediately have power, but then how to also have the re-energy afterwards. Anne said she just purchased an EcoFlow battery backup when it was on sale. That's so great. Yeah, they can be really expensive, so that's great there's a sale too. I know for some people they might have had to shut off utilities if they had maybe they were getting some lighting rerouted in their house or redoing a bathroom. Could be things like that. Doesn't have to be an emergency setting, maybe just checking in if people know where they are. Cindy, it looks like you had to drain your water tank and it was pretty messy. I cannot imagine. Yeah,
I posted that I have flashlights that are portable. You just turn them and they turn on.
perfect. Is that the hand crank ones?
Yes, yeah. They you push them in and you pull them out and they just turn on. They're really cool. And they take batteries.
Nice. Yeah, that's a great manual option to have as well for those flashlights. All right. So that was a great check-in. It sounds like a lot of you guys, or at least a couple of you, have thought about it. You have some ideas and plans in place, some items that you've gotten. Um, so that's wonderful moving forward. So when we're talking about utilities, um, after an earthquake, when things shake, pipes break. So after you immediately check on the people around you, the pets, it's good to go and check on your utilities afterwards and make sure that your house is okay or wherever you are, to prevent further emergencies that could happen because of that. So checking on water, we're going to go into them more in depth, but you want to store as much as you can if you can. And then depending on, at a certain point, pipes breaking can lead to contamination of water and things like that. So you will have to shut off your water, or at a certain point, water company might shut off your water. So it's good to collect as much as you can. Electricity, if you see burning or sparks, and then if you smell anything that's on fire or like a plasticky smell, you're going to need to turn that electricity off. But otherwise, you can leave it. It's better to give yourself that resource to have the electricity as an option. And then for gas, if you smell it, which would be like a sulfury smell, or if you can hear hissing, definitely turn that off immediately for concerns of a gas leak. Firstly, for water, we have an image on the screen of a water main shut off. And in general, if there is a hand nozzle or a lever to hold on to versus a wheel turning off option, the lever is going to be perpendicular when it's closed, so making um, like a T with the bar or with the pipe, I mean, and it'll be on if it's in line with the pipe and going horizontally in the picture. So first is that you want to gather as much water while you can, if you can, like we just discussed, especially because you don't want to have water. It could be contaminated. Um, a great way to do this is extra containers that you have, large bowls, water bottles, things like that, so that you know you'll have enough water down the line or aim to have enough water down the line. Um, and it's always good to also have stored bottles of water. Um, Highly important to have those ahead of time. But then being able to store these in proper containers, you don't want them in just any open random bucket, but something like a normal food water bottle, or not food, but food grade water bottle. I believe Anne just mentioned in the comments, make sure it's food grade. Um, and then you have water stored for the future as well. And then after that, shutting off the water. For electricity, if you see any damage, like burning, for like insulation areas, you might smell things, or if you see sparks, immediately turn it off. So in your home, depends if you're in maybe like a townhome or an apartment. I know for some people it's located near a front door. It'll be a gray box. There's an image on the screen. It's a gray metal box, and you can open it up and it'll have different switches on the inside. And typically there's a main breaker that's up at the top, and then other smaller breakers to specific areas and electrical areas within the home below it. And make sure that you're not touching any metal or in any standing water anytime that you touch the breaker box, especially for manipulating, turning things on and off. Um, Sometimes it's a good idea to put one arm behind your back just so you aren't tempted or touching anything else. Um, and you'll switch off your breaker if you see that sparks or burning or anything like that. But otherwise, you can just leave it. Um, some people worry that if they don't turn it off, there might be a power surge. But a lot of times, our homes have power surge technology, and the electric companies take that into mind. So it's also easiest to leave that utility on in case you do need it or you can access it. You might as well not turn that off and limit yourself if you don't absolutely have to. There's no sparks or burning or anything like that. For gas, similarly, only shut it off if you smell like sulfur or like a rotten egg smell, or if you can actively hear a hissing noise. You also might see the dial on the meter spinning. And if you see any of those signs, immediately turn it off. This will take a crescent wrench, so it does require a tool, and there will be a valve on it that is similar to the water on off image. And you'll want to make sure that it's cranked from being um, in line with the pipe to then being horizontal so that it shuts it off. And it will also have on off descriptions. And for each of these utilities, I also have videos and um, articles linked in the notes that will come out because these are pretty general. You can find them on Google, you can find it on YouTube, you can look up ahead of time. Maybe your apartment company has a different looking system for it, or maybe um, things look different in each person's home. So you can always look up the specifics for your home on YouTube and Google. Um, so it is also important that you don't shut off the gas unless you absolutely have to. Again, if you hear it, smell it, or see the dial, because you will need to contact your gas company to turn it back on. And it is really difficult to do to like, it's a large utility. Um, we don't take it lightly when we have to turn any of the utilities off to our home. But another good option for events like earthquakes and things like that, of course, we don't know when they'll be, so they might occur during times when we aren't home. So there are tools and technology like the seismic gas shutoff. There's an image on the screen that has a gas pipe, and above it is a chamber that's enclosed, and it has a metal ball and then a swinging arm below it. And they generally work that they can sense um, vibrations from earthquakes and things like that, large disturbances, and it will automatically move the swinging arm that is inside the seismic gas valve shutoff so that the little metal ball will drop and it will block that gas pipe. So it'll essentially close the pipe for you when it senses um, an occurrence like an earthquake, a large earthquake. So if that is a route that you're interested in, or maybe um, seeing how useful it is and if it's a route that you want to go, it's a great idea to talk to your gas company. They can also come out and put them on. They put them on for you. So it is a good option to think about. But of course, there are other means for it. There are other types of shut-off valves and sensory valves. And then just to note, because I think I've heard people online discussing this and I've seen it referenced other places. Um, they can be reset, and it's not something that would go off just from like a light touch. It would have to be like an earthquake or something like that. So you don't need to worry that your gas would accidentally be shut off from, um, like bumping it or hitting with your garden hose or something like that. And so now we'll move into power outages. For general tips, um, and well, power in general is really important. It's part of our daily lives. It's integrated into everything that we do. We need it to communicate, to cook foods, to heat and cool our homes. And for some people, it's also not just an inconvenience to without electricity, it can also be really deadly. So on this screen, we're going over some of the general tips, and then we'll get into some more detailed power relations with medical devices and things like that. So first is for things that are food related in a short-term power outage. It's best to not open your fridge or freezer. Um, the contents of your fridge, it depends with like meat products and dairy products. But for the most part, if you don't touch your fridge, it can be good for up to 4 hours. For meats and dairies, it can be closer to two. And we do have a sheet that has specific FDA food guidelines on that. It is better to be safe than sorry. And go back afterwards. And if you, once you have your power block on and you're going through your fridge, um, yeah, it's better to be safe than sorry rather than keep a food item that could make you ill. But for short term, don't open your fridge or freezer and eat from your dry goods or your pantry first, since those won't need refrigeration. Could be breads, it could be canned items that you have, things like that. And then for long-term power outages of like 3 days to 2 weeks kind of timeline, you're going to want to eat from your refrigerator and freezer first. First the fridge and then the freezer, because those will be the items that will go bad the quickest. And knowing that you might be in this for a longer period of time, you want to save the more shelf-stable items for later on. And that's again like your pantry goods, your dry goods. It's good to gather in one room for warmth, um, as well as doing things like covering windows with comforters or blankets to help prevent heat from leaking out through those spots. And it doesn't have to be one room that nobody can leave. That sounds like its own um, emergency. But it's one room where you might spend most of your time and where you can go and kind of keep more of a warm pocket in your house. For candles and things like lighting your home, especially if it's a power outage caused by an earthquake, you definitely don't want to add any possible risk of fires by having things like lit candles spread out your home. So if you can go with a flameless option, that's wonderful. Um, and then going along with the light topic, there are emergency light bulbs that have a backup battery or power in them. Some of them are just normal looking light bulbs. Others look like a wall plug that also adapts that you can take it off the wall and it retains power. So those are great to have in areas that are like hallways, or maybe near your exits and entrances to your home, or near where you're keeping supplies so that you can see where where you're going and how to get to your items the quickest. Um, and then for heating your home, this is hugely talked about, but you're going to want to use, or you're going to avoid using your stove that's gas operated and electric since you won't be having power, or a grill, and especially don't use a generator inside your home. Do not use it in a garage. Don't use it outside, but near a window. It's super important to um, keep yourself safe in the process of doing this and don't expose yourself to possible carbon monoxide and things like that. So for power, it can be kind of difficult to decide what you are going to power and where that all starts. So here are three categories you can break it down into for critical, high priority, and everything else. So some examples of critical life sustaining equipment are home dialysis machines, home and portable oxygen concentrators, and ventilators. Examples of high priority medical equipment are powered wheelchairs, mini refrigerators for storing medications, and CPAP machines. And then if you're someone that has all of those other categories, power needs met, or maybe those don't apply to you, then you create your own priority list of things like running a heater to keep your home warm, or running an air conditioner to keep it cool, running a refrigerator and freezer, as well as communication devices. So here's examples of watt usage and possible power sources. Kind of something to note with all of these. If you or someone you know uses an electrical medical machine or anything like that, it's good to know what the wattage and power usage of is of your specific machine or um, appliance so that you know specifically what to look for your power source. For a home dialysis machine, home and portable oxygen, and a powered wheelchair, those are about 650 to 600 watts. And on the screen, I have home dialysis, home and portable oxygen, as well as ventilators, feeding pumps, insulation tubes, ventricular equipment, and tracheostomy care underlined, since those would be under critical, and just showing examples of how you'd have to decide what appliances and what machines and what electronic usage would be in that critical category for you. Um, Going back, some possible power sources for 650 to 600 watts would be something like a home solar system with a battery storage so you can access that stored power. RVs with onboard solar systems, similarly, so that you can tap into that stored battery power from solar. Generators or RVs with generators. A ventilator, mini refrigerator, and a nebulizer compressor would be about 100 watts. So that could be energy from electric vehicles that have 220 watt outlets, things like Teslas or the Rivians. Um, they'll say specifically on there how many watts they can power. A very large battery bank with solar recharging. Um, some examples are EcoFlow and Jackery are two commonly referred to brands. I think we had a couple of the brands mentioned in the chat as well of people getting some. I believe Anne said she purchased an EcoFlow. Um, and then there are options like car and marine batteries. You'll just have to look at things like an inverter to make sure that the power source that you're using, like the battery, matches up with the machine that you're using. Things like a feeding pump, an infusion tube, or ventricular assist equipment, or tracheostomy care and speech to text tablets. Those use about 10 to 70 watts. So you can use any of the above that's not currently being used. You can also use a power source that's up to 100 watts. This could be um, a power bank. This could be a battery bank or solar powered systems with an inverter. I also want to put a little note in there that about your cell phones are about 5 to 15 watts. So they're much smaller. So it's something to keep in mind that you might be able to have the resources to charge phones and everything like that. But these are devices and machines that need more extensive planning and thought into how you'll achieve that power. And then also, battery circles or like relay teams are a really great idea. It's some of the best success stories that we've seen of people that have had long-term power outages was when they used one power source while that power source is being used. You have a backup and then you can rotate and swap out. So as long as you can keep recharging your power station. Also, I want to add a note as well that diversifying your power and the types of power that you're using is also going to really help. So being able to have not just one option, maybe not just a generator, but also having solar power and a hand crank version, or a hand crank phone charger, something that diversifies your resources. And then community is power. Talk to your neighbors. Again, talk to your medical team about backup solutions for what you need. Maybe there's manual versions. Talk to the manufacturer of your devices. Now is the best time to talk to your neighbor who might be outdoorsy. Maybe ask them if they have extra generators and power equipment that you could use in an emergency. Family and friends. There's also resources like Seattle Neighborhoods Actively Prepared, as well as Seattle Emergency Hubs. We're going to talk about those in the next meeting on Thursday. But they are great hubs where everybody can gather if you need something in an emergency, if you need a resource, if you are somebody that's more power dependent. It's ways to have more support around you. Seattle Light Life Support Equipment Program is a registry that you can sign up for. I'll include the link in the notes that come out afterwards. And it's a way to get yourself mentioned for utility companies to know that you are a power dependent individual. And then this is to get you thinking outside of the box. So like we said, maybe manual options, resource sharing with your neighbors. There might be possible grants or sales going on for some of these higher price items like generators, um, but getting thoughts going on it because there are ways to prepare yourself and set yourself up. It's just going to take a little bit of planning ahead of time. So real quick, I just saw we're at 12:32. Um, would anyone like to share? And if you have to leave, we totally understand. But were there any ways that utilities have gone out during a disaster? And how has that been the biggest challenge? But were there also ways that you were able to overcome this or things that helped?
Well, I cannot figure out how to raise my hand, so I will just talk. We had the last power storm outage here in Seattle last year, there was a couple up in the North Seattle area, and the husband was on an oxygen concentrator, but he had battery bank capability. He had two of them, and they did not have a source like a generator, but the local bakery had installed solar panels, and he was unique in that he made sure that he had power battery banks capability. So they were able to use his power source to recharge the battery, and they set up exactly what you described, the circular team, so that they knew what time the battery would last and they could go shift out and change it. And he was actually on the third floor, so they couldn't get him down to take him to a location, so they had to do the battery relay. So that was a great success story.
Wow, yeah, that's wonderful. Again, it takes a little bit of planning sometimes, and thinking ahead. And then, of course, sometimes that only does so much. And then it's just problem solving and talking to the people around you, talking to businesses like this bakery. That's wonderful.
They're called Grateful Bread, and it's in the Wedgwood area.
This is Cynthia speaking. The power went out at my building actually a few months ago, and I had to take my charger um, and some of my stuff. Luckily, it went on. This is when it went off in a lot in part of Seattle. It was actually last summer this happened, so I had to take everything out to make sure that I had my phone charger and everything. But if it were to stay on, off, they say it was going to stay off till 2 o'clock. I had portable lights, and I also had a portable charger with me to charge my cell phone.
Nice. Yeah, it sounds like you had some good things to prepare ahead for. And those portable phone chargers, they're wonderful. There's so many options out there. They're great for powering small devices and things for sure. I apologize that we're running a little over time. So if anyone has any other things they want to mention, you can definitely throw it in the chat. Um, I'm gonna hop forward. For next week's event, we will be talking about communication and making a plan. So if you don't already have, well, first, if you don't already have a communication plan or emergency contacts, think about that, um, as well as creating a plan for your power needs. Now that we've just talked about some of them, if you do have individuals that have larger machines or equipments, these are some options. And you can refer back to and look at the slides that I share. And it's a lot to think about and can be overwhelming. This was just a very small taste, but it is important having power and life-sustaining equipment if you need, as well as food and energy communication. It's good to think about. Here is the event survey. Thank you so much for everyone that shared their time with us today. We would love to get your feedback for improving these events and future webinars. So if you would like to complete a quick event survey, it's less than 5 minutes. I'll put the link in the chat, and thank you again.
And this is Cynthia Coffin speaking again. A quick reminder that today's session was recorded and will be uploaded to the Disability Empowerment Center's YouTube channel. So if you would like to revisit the conversation or share it with others, you'll be able to access it there. Once the webinar series is complete, we will post a link in the chat as well. We also hope you'll join us next week. Join us on Thursday, February 12th. We'll be talking about communication and planning and making a plan. Thank you again for being a part of our conversation, and we hope you have a wonderful rest of your day.
Thank you.